You are Locked On Bearcats, your daily podcast on the Cincinnati Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you so much for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen of every day. My name is Alex Frank, welcoming you to a brand new week here on Locked On Bearcats, where today's episode on this Monday, January 10th of 2022, is presented by Sonos. Experience the game like never before with Sonos Arc, the premium smart soundbar for TV, movies, music, gaming, and more. Visit Sonos.com to learn more. I'm bringing all of my experiences from my days as University of Cincinnati's Bearcats Media Sports Director, where I was a commentator for Bearcats football and men's basketball games. In addition, I was the host of several live shows and podcasts on the Bearcats in our radio and television studios. Made a lot of great connections with those in the athletic department and those who covered the team professionally, which I guess I'm one of those professionals now with this podcast. I don't know, but anyway, bringing all of those experiences from Bearcats Media here to Locked On Bearcats. And boy, do we have a lot to get to today. The first day of the new week, National Championship Monday. Obviously, we wish the Bearcats were playing tonight in the College Football Playoff National Championship game presented by AT&T. Still excited for the game, but the Bearcats, it is disappointing because I think we talked ourselves into thinking the Bearcats could give Alabama a game, maybe win. But the reality is we are now in the off season. And in a sport that is 365 days a year, there is still a lot to talk about. And now that the Bearcats have established themselves as perhaps a football-first school, football is going to drive the conversation this time of year. Like normally in years past, it's been basketball is taking center stage. And obviously the Bearcats have had some good basketball teams as opposed to football teams in years past. That might be flip-flopped. But Bearcats football is now center stage. I'm going to get to that in my final segment today when I touch on Desmond Ritter and his legacy. Desmond Ritter declaring for the draft over the weekend. But more importantly, it's who's coming back and who's returning to next year's team, which I've said is going to be the most important season for Bearcats football. Because it's one thing to live up to the hype one year, exceed it in some regards, but it's another thing to prove that what you did last year is not a fluke. So the biggest news that broke over the weekend was Ben Bryant announcing his return. And there are multiple angles to this. There are multiple takeaways from this. The first being that I don't know how it's going to impact this Bearcats team. And what I mean by that is it can go multiple different ways. Either A, he becomes the starting quarterback, which there are way worse alternatives than that. Or B, he comes back and he's a backup. The same position he held when he was here previously. So, if you don't know what's happened to Ben Bryant since he left the program at the end of the 2020 season, he transferred to Eastern Michigan. This past season, he was the Eagles starting quarterback. He led them to a berth in the Lending Tree Bowl. Not a bad year for a college football quarterback who's never been a full-time starter at this level. Ben Bryant last year, going to the Lending Tree Bowl, was a 68.4% passer with just over 3,000 yards at 3,121, 14 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. Those are largely pedestrian numbers. For a quarterback who hasn't had full-time experience, they're not terrible numbers. He lasted the full season. Give him credit for that. He played a full season of college football in a conference that is, a good conference, average. The MAC's nothing special. It's not like he was a full-time starter in a Power 5 conference or even the American. Didn't get a lot of national exposure. Now he's coming back to Cincinnati, where if he does win the starting job, which he could, he's going to be competing against 3 other quarterbacks, though. Evan Prater, who I would put as the front runner right now for the starting position. Evan Prater, Ben Bryant, and I'll get more on that once we get to spring ball, who I think is going to be the starters. Evan Prater, Ben Bryant, Brady Lichtenberg, and Luther Richardson are going to be your candidates for the starting quarterback job. So, if Ben Bryant does win the starting job, which he can, he's my number 2 pick to win the starting job. But if Ben Bryant wins the starting quarterback position, there are going to be a lot more expectations placed on his shoulders because of what the Bearcats have done since he departed. Ben Bryant has made 1 start for the Bearcats in his career. I remember it vividly. You probably too remember it that way. It was Black Friday of 2019, the final regular season game for Cincinnati. A road game in Memphis. A game where the Bearcats, it was a weird situation. Because if the Bearcats won the game, they would have hosted the AAC Championship game next weekend. The following weekend, excuse me. If they lost the game, they would go back to Memphis the following week for the AAC title game. Well, the latter happened. They lost the game, but Ben Bryant played admirably well. 20 of 32, 229 yards, a touchdown, 2 interceptions. Now, those 2 interceptions, look, I mean, you throw 2 interceptions in a game, the chances of you winning aren't very good. But considering the Bearcats fell behind in that game 17-3, and that Memphis defense was really good. Like, they had just held USF to 5 first downs the entire game the week before. That defense was really good, Memphis. And Ben Bryant, stepping in for Desmond Ritter, who was out with a shoulder injury, played well. He brought the Bearcats back from down 14, tied the game in the second quarter. He had a touchdown run. He had a beautiful throw to Alec Pierce on the play prior to that. That was in the fourth quarter. The Bearcats cut the lead to 3. They lost the game. But you saw that Ben Bryant is capable of leading an offense. It's not like he went out there and was 14 of 33 for 112 yards, no touchdowns, 3 picks. No. Ben Bryant threw 2 interceptions in a game where the Bearcats were aggressive offensively. But if he's going to win the starting job, there are now expectations because of where the Bearcats have been and the standard that Desmond Ritter set. I'll touch on that in the final segment of today's show. But Ben Bryant coming back is very interesting because this storyline can end in multiple different ways. If Ben Bryant assumes the starting role, or if he's relegated back to his backup position, which he held for multiple years before he transferred. Bryant's not the only player who is returning to the Bearcats team. He, of course, was not on last year's team. But 2 players who are coming back. And they're going to play, once again, integral roles to the defense. More on Bryant and those 2 players on defense coming back next, here on Locked On Bearcats. So if Ben Bryant is going to win the starting quarterback job for the Bearcats, I'll tell you one thing that might help him do so. If he makes one of his New Year's resolutions to include the Built Bar in his plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, maybe even better than the candy bar, because it will make you want to stick to your New Year's resolution. It tastes so good you'll want to eat it, unlike other protein bars which can be chalky or waxy or taste like a chemical spill, and nobody wants that. You want to eat healthy, but it just gets so boring. By like week 3, you might be thinking, alright, this is just not worth it. Where's the chocolate? And I'm here to tell you that Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. But that's not all. Built Bars only contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar and net carbs each, but they contain 17 grams of protein. So even if you're not a huge fan of working out, you can at least eat something that tastes good and is good for you. So that way, when you eat a delicious Built Bar, you can almost count it as a workout. Here's an offer. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Maybe Bryan will do that, and that can put him on the fast track to winning the Bearcats starting quarterback job. But for you, you can go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Once again, thank you for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen of every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Alex Frank here with you on this Monday, January the 10th. I am going to make my pick for the national championship game tonight because I feel like I should. The Bearcats were a part of this college football playoff, and the team that they lost to is playing for a national championship tonight. And I probably will end up watching it, being that I am the host of a Locked On college team. So, now that we're in the off season, and, another thing too is this off season going to have that same hype and have fans ready for the start of next season? And I think we'll talk about that more as we progress throughout this time. I think it will, especially the year that the Bearcats had. So, Bryant coming back to Cincinnati. When I first saw it, of course, you're piqued by it, you're intrigued by it, just in general, because you remember it was just over a year ago. And it feels so long ago because of Desmond Ritter's ascension. But it wasn't that long ago when Bryant was almost the Bearcats' starting quarterback. There were those clamoring, maybe you were one of them, maybe you were someone that wanted Bryant to be the starting quarterback because you thought that Desmond Ritter was holding this offense's potential back. But what was Bryant going to give you other than a fresh start at the game's most important position? What was he going to give you? Experience? Didn't have that. What did you think he was going to give you? A better chance of winning? Desmond Ritter, fun fact. So that was after the third game of the 2020 season, which was a truncated season. Desmond Ritter at that point, he won 10 games his first year, 11 games his second year. He was up to 24 victories in his career. And if you were someone that wanted this, you wanted Bryant, who was 0-1, to take over, that was not going to happen. That was not going to happen. And if it was going to happen, Desmond Ritter then goes on a 5-game run that eliminates that entire conversation. And that's why last offseason was the first time where there maybe truly wasn't going to be a quarterback competition. Luke Fickell likes competition. That's why the Bearcats are a top 10 program. They can go 1, 2, 3, 4 deep at a lot of positions. But Bryant coming back, it is going to make this offseason very interesting because I think it adds pressure not only to those in the quarterback room already, but also the coaching staff. In the most important offseason in Bearcats football history, the most important decision they are going to have to make is who is this team's starting quarterback. Bryant, by the way, can have up to 2 years of eligibility. He's given one automatically because he's a graduate transfer. Graduate transfer rules state that you don't have to sit out a year. But Bryant can also use the pandemic year, which will give him 2 years. And Bryant, is, unless he has a Joe Burrow-esque 2019 year, is not going pro after 2022. So if he does have a good season, the chance is he could end up coming back for the following year. But how does that impact other quarterbacks? How does that impact Devin Prater, who's entering his third season with the program and has taken just 25 snaps? Hasn't really shown what he can do as a passer yet. I like what I'm seeing from his running abilities. I do. But this is now very interesting, because your quarterback room, for the first time in years, the most any quarterback has played is one game. So you talk about experience. Ben Bryant coming back gives you that. Just one game, though. That is the crazy thing. If you exclude Ben Bryant, no quarterback in that room that will compete for the starting job in the offseason has played in a game, has made a start. Ben Bryant's the only one to have done that. And he did so under very significant circumstances. And for the most part, played admirably well. Now, speaking of Evan Prater, does Ben Bryant coming back put a chink in his development? I don't think you can deny that it does. I can't. Because before Friday, I was someone that thought, maybe you were too. I thought, okay, Ritter's going to the NFL draft, Evan Prater's going to take over, and the highest rated recruit in UC football history is going to finally be the Bearcats' starting quarterback, and the team is going to ride or die with him. But now Ben Bryant is going to come back and take that spot from him. So Ben Bryant's going to start, and a 4-star recruit's going to be the backup. Is that good? Is that bad? I don't know. Because if Bryan plays, that takes another year of Prater's eligibility away. That's something to keep in mind. Most quarterbacks that have done well with this Bearcats football program, Tony Pike, Desmond Ritter, they were quarterbacks for multiple years. 3, 4 years. Evan Prater's going to get maybe 2? 1? Like, this decision, the decision that the coaching staff makes as to who the starting quarterback is, this off season, going into next season, is going to have a major impact. Is Evan Prater going to want to stay if he doesn't think he's going to have a future within this program as a starter? What's going to happen to Brady Lichtenberg and Luther Richardson? Because we don't know if Ben Bryant's going to be the starter. We don't know how many years he's going to be here. And Prater backed up Desmond Ritter, but now he's going to be backing up Ben Bryant. There's a lot of unknown with Bryant because you've only seen one start. And again, you've only seen 25 snaps from Evan Prater in garbage time, mop-up time. Whoever does play quarterback for Cincinnati next year, there's going to be some growing pains. You are going to be given the keys. You are going to be taking over for the greatest quarterback in UC football history. A player who may be the greatest, is one of the greatest University of Cincinnati athletes ever. That is not an exaggeration. Now, let's go to the other side of the ball. You got 2 key players coming back. I've enjoyed watching these 2 players evolve over the years. Jayvon Hicks, if you remember in 2019, which there were a lot of high expectations. And I remember when I made my spotting board, when I commentated those games, and I commentated every home game but one that year. I remember when I was writing down names, I wrote down Jayvon Hicks, and I'm like, I wonder if I'll see him this season, or if I'm just writing his name down because he's on the team. Oh, you saw him that year. He had 5 interceptions that year. He had 2 this past season. He's played in 39 games. But Jayvon Hicks coming back at least gives you something in the secondary. Jayvon Hicks, by the way, in 2019. If you remember, James Wiggins goes down 3 days before the season starts. Torn ACL, misses the entire season. Devastating. You're thinking, well, now what? Enter Jayvon Hicks. Opening night against UCLA. Recovers a fumble, intercepts a pass. A stalwart in the Bearcats secondary that year. Him and Derek Forrest were unbelievable. Hicks comes back. So now you have at least somebody. Now you still have to replace Sauce Gardner, Kobe Bryant. Who are you going to replace those guys with? I don't know. Up front, you're going to have Malik Vann back. Both Hicks and Vann announced unfinished business. They're coming back. Malik Vann this past season, career high 3.5 sacks, 8.5 tackles for loss, 40 games played in his career. Local product. By the way, these two players, Hicks a Coleraine High School product, Vann a Fairfield High School product. So they've seen the evolvement of this Bearcats football program through a hometown lens. And they've played a huge role in it themselves on the field. That defensive line, I'm not really sure what to think because, yeah, you're going to be losing Curtis Brooks, you're going to be losing Myjai Sanders, but you're going to keep Jawan Briggs, hopefully, and now Malik Vann comes back. This is where development, recruiting come into play. If you want to get to where Alabama is, you must continue to develop your offensive and defensive lines. That's where this Bearcats team needs to get better. And for a program that prides itself on being driven through those two areas, in the trenches, you would think that they're going to be able to get to that level. Continue to develop. I think they can. And Jayvon Hicks and Malik Vann, that bolsters your back end of your defense and your front end of your defense. And for an offseason that is going to feature a lot of turnover, and we may not be done yet with who's coming back and who's not. But in an offseason that's going to feature a lot of turnover, getting those two guys back is critical. And making sure you get the starting quarterback position right is even more critical. I have to wonder, what are you thinking if you're Evan Prater? Are you nervous? Are you not thinking about it? What are you thinking? If you're Brady Lichtenberg or Luther Richardson, it's not like a quarterback who has had a full season playing here is coming back. It's a quarterback who's made one start and 11 appearances. And a quarterback that, yes, fans wanted to start over Desmond Ritter. But if he assumes the starting job, he now opens himself up to some criticism from the fan base if he doesn't deliver next year. Very tough spot potentially for Ben Bryant to be in. And maybe a tough spot for the coaching staff to determine who their starting quarterback is going to be. Especially after the greatest quarterback in UC football history announced last Friday that he is declaring for the NFL draft. What Desmond Ritter's legacy is, we'll get to next here on Locked On Bearcats. Hey Bearcats fans, Alex Frank here with an incredible app everyone who buys gas needs to know about, Get Upside. My listeners are making up to 25 cents for every gallon of gas every time they fill up. Just download the free Get Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now using promo code SCORE and getting a bonus 25 cents per gallon on your first fill up. So that's up to 50 cents cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using Get Upside by just downloading the app for free and using promo code SCORE and getting up to 50 cents per gallon cash back on your first tank. Some people who drive a lot are making as much as $200 to $300 a month in cash back, and there's no catch. The cash back gets added right to your account so you can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, and e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Get Upside app and use promo code SCORE for up to 50 cents per gallon cash back on your first tank. That's code SCORE for up to 50 cents per gallon cash back on your first tank. Once again, thank you for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen of every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Alex Frank here with you, and this is an interesting offseason because of the turnover, and now we have an opportunity to, for the first time, really talk about the legacy of a legend. Something that we have not done with this Bearcats football program. We might have done it with Tony Pike. Because he was a 3-year starter, led the Bearcats to that undefeated season in 2009. But he did not reach the caliber that Desmond Ritter did. No offense to Tony Pike. Love the man. I've worked with him. He is a legend in Cincinnati. But Desmond Ritter is greater than that. Desmond Ritter is, I think he is up there with the greatest athletes, not just within the Bearcats football program, but in UC football history. I think about guys like Oscar Robertson, Kenyon Martin, Sandy Koufax. Desmond Ritter is up there. He's going to be in the UC Hall of Fame. He's going to have his name in the Nippert Stadium Ring of Honor. He is the greatest quarterback to ever play in UC football history. But one thing he did, his ascension in his junior season over that 5-game stretch, where the Bearcats tickled your imagination with the possibility that they could make the college football playoff. That was more so a possibility this past season, which obviously they did. A lot of that was due to Desmond Ritter. He became such a focal point of the program that he was doing weekly media appearances starting after the Notre Dame game. No player had ever done that since I don't know when. As far back as I can remember, Desmond Ritter was doing that. They haven't done that at a program like Cincinnati. But that's because Desmond Ritter made this program. He got this program to that level. Like you see, Alabama, their players are doing media availability every week. Clemson, Ohio State, Oklahoma, the quarterback has his own press conference. Cincinnati became that because Ritter was becoming a household name, and as too was the Bearcats program. And like I said, if you wanted Ben Bryant to take his spot as the starting quarterback, it was understandable maybe through midway of the 2020 season. But what you didn't know, even though Ritter struggled at times, was that the program was ascending as he was. He comes in, most Bearcats fans, maybe you're one of them, I was one of them, who was like, well, Ritter at least gives the Bearcats a chance to make a bowl game. And then by the end of his first season, they're 10-2. And then at the end of his second season, they're playing in the conference championship game. And then at the end of his career, they're in the college football playoff. And this is at a school that has historically been basketball. But it is absolutely fair to say that Desmond Ritter is the reason why the Bearcats are now a football school. The quarterback is the most important position in football. We know that. Because he can change the trajectory of a program. He can make, and a head coach can do it too. But the quarterback is ultimately the one on the field. He can take a program who knows how far. That's what Deshaun Watson did at Clemson. That's what Joe Burrow did at LSU. That's what Tim Tebow did at Florida. It's what You can name any other legendary quarterback over the years. Cam Newton at Auburn. Jameis Winston at Florida State. All these great quarterbacks, Trevor Lawrence at Clemson, all these quarterbacks I'm mentioning made their programs great. Changed their programs. Desmond Ritter did that. With his leadership, with his charisma, with his style of play, with his winning knack. That's what Desmond, with his winning mentality, I should say, that's what Desmond Ritter did. It's also, I don't think it's far-fetched to say this, that Desmond Ritter is going to be one of the driving forces, not just in Clifton, but citywide in this entire city of Cincinnati. That why it's going to eventually transition into being a football town first, not baseball, football. Because the Bearcats, who, like I said, 30 years ago were probably 4th out of 4 in the popularity contest of teams in our city, Desmond Ritter took Bearcats football to its postseason, which is exclusive. And you look at what Joe Burrow's doing with the Bengals, Ritter's going to play a part of making this town a football town. And you got high school football and all the showcase games and the prospects that come out of those schools and the intensity and the competitiveness and the passion that everyone has for wherever they go to high school in this city. Ritter's going to be, and look at some of them now, and a lot of them now are going to Cincinnati. Ritter's playing a role in that. He's the greatest quarterback in UC history. That much is undeniable. He's one of the greatest athletes to ever come through the school. I don't think it's far-fetched to say that. A university that has some very noteworthy athletes that have come through this program. Oscar Robertson, Kenyon Martin, Sandy Koufax. Revered athletes. Desmond Ritter has to be one of those because of where he took Bearcats football and how much of a face of the program he became. And like I said, college football is more about non-metropolitan areas. Cincinnati's a metropolitan area, but college football can still be prevalent here. Ritter is a reason for that. The Bearcats have been traditionally a basketball school. I know that. I love Bearcats basketball. And basketball, I think, is where this school places its flag in athletics. But that might be in the past now. With football and making the move to the Big 12. If it wasn't for Ritter ascending this program to where it is, I don't know if there'd be a push for the Big 12. Ritter came in right after the Bearcats were essentially denied a chance to expand into the Big 12. And he came into a program that had been driven into the depths of college football irrelevancy. He not only brought it back, but changed the way we thought of how good UC football can be. Because of the uniqueness that he stayed here for 4 years. And all the school records he set, and all the memorable games he had, might be a top 10 this week. And the fact that he not only transformed the university into a football university first, that is its most popular sport, perhaps he played a role in the city as a whole becoming a football city. It's a lot. And more on that, we'll touch on more on that later on this week. Ritter's legacy, and more on the quarterback situation with Bryan coming back from Eastern Michigan. We'll keep track of who's coming back, who's leaving. We know Sauce Gardner's leaving. We know Jerome Ford's leaving. We know that Desmond Ritter's going to the draft. Where they could end up, what they can do for an NFL franchise. A lot to get to this week. Men's basketball's got two crucial games this week. Maybe a little bit on that, but still, it's just what a time to be a Bearcats football fan. That there's a lot to talk about in January. The season just ended, and the next season is not until September, and yet we're still talking football. It's great. We'll be back tomorrow, but until then, you can follow me on Twitter at Frankie_Natty with 2 N's, NNATI. You can follow me on Instagram, AlexFrank9_, and you can email me at alex3frank@gmail.com. That's all lowercase alex, the number 3, frank@gmail.com. Thank you once again for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen of every day. Now make your second listen Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets is hosted by your boy Q, with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and available on all platforms. Until we talk to you tomorrow on Tuesday, enjoy the national championship game tonight. I'm going to roll with Alabama 34-20. I think they're just going to be a little too much for Georgia. I think what we saw in the Cotton Bowl with their offensive line bulldozing UC's defensive line and vice versa, the other way around, Alabama's defensive line against UC's offensive line. I think it's going to be a lot of the same tonight. I think Bryan Robinson Jr. has another big game. I think Bryce Young has a big game. I think Will Anderson makes a high-impact play. And I just think Alabama's going to be a little too much for Georgia once again. So enjoy the national championship game. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. And until we talk to you tomorrow, make today a Bearcat day. And we will be back tomorrow. Have a Bearcat day.